I think that song is a good lead into this series and this sermon that we have today. It's a reminder that we need to be in God's presence ever the more and be in relationship with Him. And that should be something that overwhelms us, that overcomes us, that inspires us, that moves us. And that is part of that growing in our faith, is when we are able to truly experience who God is and what He does in our hearts and our lives and through us and in us. I think faith is central to our relationship with God, and it's essential to the experience that we have as Christians that is unlike anything else that you can experience in any other place. And to be overwhelmed by His Spirit is like nothing else that we can experience and have or get from any other facet or any other place in our lives. And when we taste that, when we feel that, when we go through that, we can't help but fall in love with God even more and be willing to take the steps of faith that God calls us to take. Last week we started the series of cultivating our faith as a church. I feel like this is an important series that is going to kind of lay down the framework and lay down the foundation for where God wants us to go, how we are going to experience Him, and hopefully in that process get to be overwhelmed by His Spirit and the things that we do and the things that we see and the stories that we share with each other. Last week we talked about having faith over our fears, and a reminder that God can do miracles in our life when we humbly expect Him to. I think that's what we want to do in this process as we go through this series, is to be reminded and be asking God to do miracles in our life. We want to experience miracles through different acts and different challenges and different responses. And I think that we should expect God to be consistently doing miracles in us and around us and through us. I think sometimes those miracles can just be something that we take for granted, but every day, every step, every relationship that we have, every time we look at a verse and it speaks to us is truly a miracle of God working in us. And in this series, one of the things that we are going to be doing, or I guess three of the things that we're going to be focusing on, is growing, sowing, and going out in faith. That is something that I want you guys to be doing and thinking about and focusing on as we go through this. That every week that you either be growing some way in your faith, that maybe you be sowing your faith in some way, or that you be going out in faith to do the things that God lays on your heart to do. I know that He's going to be challenging different people to do different things, to respond in different ways, and to be willing to step out in our faith in the ways that He's going to lead us. God wants us to grow in our faith. It's something that allows us to be more faithful to Him. The more that we trust in Him, the more that we experience Him, the more that we see that He will, like we said last week, that He has all these promises in store for us and that He will be true to those promises. The more that we put Him or see Him at work in those ways, the more that we are able to really, truly understand who God is and be able to trust Him with our lives. Because that is a facet of our faith, is having that full trust in God. That God wants us to grow, that God wants us to sow and to eventually go to different people. There's different verses that really speak to that as we kind of do a run through of this and looking at the verses that speak to those three things. In Colossians 2:7, it says this: "Let your roots grow down into Him and draw up nourishment from Him, so that you will grow in faith, strong and vigorous." I think that is the challenge for all of us, to be growing in our faith. I think different people at